Online connections can feel thrilling, romantic, or even comforting, but sometimes the digital mask hides something far darker. What begins as flirtation or friendship can spiral into obsession, deception, and violence. These terrifying online relationships, built on trust and illusion, have tragically ended in murder, shocking families and communities alike. Grace Millane's story begins the way many modern travel stories do, bright, hopeful, and full of that restless, post-graduation energy, where the world feels wide open, and every airport looks like the start of a new adventure. At just 22, she had finished university and decided to celebrate by backpacking across the globe, collecting cities instead of souvenirs and memories instead of routines, moving from place to place with the easy confidence of someone young, independent, and excited about life. By December 2018, she was in Auckland, New Zealand, sharing cheerful updates, exploring the waterfront, meeting new people, and doing what thousands of solo travelers do every day without a second thought. One evening, like so many people her age, she opened Tinder to find company for the night and matched with a local man named Jesse Kempson. CCTV later showed them meeting for drinks, laughing, walking through the city, stopping at bars, looking for all the world like an ordinary first date between two strangers testing the waters. Nothing about it seemed alarming. If anything, it looked normal, casual, harmless, the kind of interaction you would scroll past without noticing. Eventually, they returned to his hotel room, and that is where the night took a dark and irreversible turn. Inside that room, Grace was strangled to death. Kempson would later claim it was an accident during consensual rough sex, a defense that tried to frame the tragedy as a misunderstanding rather than violence, but the evidence told a colder, more deliberate story. Instead of panic or calling for help, his actions afterward painted a chilling picture of calculation. He searched online for things like flesh-eating birds and hottest fire, as if trying to figure out how to dispose of a body, bought a suitcase large enough to carry her remains, cleaned the room, and then transported her body out of the city. He drove to a remote bush area and buried her, attempting to erase every trace, then shockingly went on another Tinder date the very next day, chatting and smiling as though nothing had happened. That contrast is what unsettled people the most. The eerie normality, the way someone could switch back into everyday life while hiding something so horrific. Meanwhile, Grace's family back in the UK grew worried when her messages stopped. What should have been a birthday, filled with calls and photos, turned into silence, and soon police were retracing her final hours through hotel logs and CCTV cameras, piecing together her movements like a tragic puzzle. The case quickly drew international attention, not just because of the crime itself, but because it shattered the comforting illusion that travel and dating apps are always safe, that bad things only happen somewhere else. The footage of Grace smiling on her last night out, carefree and trusting, made the loss feel painfully personal to strangers around the world. During the trial, prosecutors dismantled Kempson's story, showing that this wasn't an accident or panic but deliberate behavior, followed by attempts to cover it up. He was ultimately convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison. What remains, beyond the headlines and courtroom details, is the memory of a young woman who simply wanted to see the world and celebrate her freedom. Grace wasn't reckless or foolish. She was doing something millions of people do every day. That's what makes the story hit so hard. It isn't just a true crime case. It's a reminder of how quickly an ordinary night can turn, and how a bright, joyful journey was stolen far too soon. Philip Markoff did not look like a villain from a crime documentary. He looked like the kind of person your parents would proudly introduce to relatives at dinner and say this is the future doctor. In 2009, he was a clean-cut Boston University medical student, engaged, intelligent, soft-spoken, the kind of person professors trusted and neighbors barely noticed. His life seemed neatly mapped out. Finish med school, get married, build a respectable career, maybe save a few lives along the way. But beneath that polished, resume-friendly surface, something darker was quietly unfolding, like a second life running in the background that nobody could see. While classmates were cramming for exams and planning weddings, Markoff was scrolling through Craigslist, specifically the erotic services section, using it not for curiosity but as a hunting ground. He would contact women posing as a client, arrange meetings in hotel rooms, and show up looking harmless, almost boyish, which made it easier for victims to lower their guard. Then the tone shifted. Armed with a gun and zip ties, he robbed them, taking cash, jewelry, anything valuable. It was cold, calculated, and disturbingly methodical, less like a desperate crime and more like a checklist. The most tragic encounter came in April 2009 with Julissa Brisman, a 25-year-old massage therapist trying to make a living. They met at a Marriott hotel, just another booking on her schedule, but it ended in violence. Surveillance cameras later showed Markov calmly entering and leaving the hotel, as if he were just another guest grabbing ice from the hallway machine. Inside the room, Brisman was shot and killed. That contrast is what makes the story so chilling. The ordinary hallway, the quiet hotel carpet, and then something irreversible happening behind a closed door. After the murder, investigators began piecing together clues like something out of a procedural drama. Cell phone records, Craigslist messages, hotel key cards, and crystal-clear security footage. Step by step, the clean-cut medical student image started to crack. When police arrested Markov, the shock rippled everywhere. Friends could not believe it. Professors were stunned. His fiancée reportedly insisted there had to be some mistake. How does someone who looks so normal end up accused of something so brutal? That question hung over the case like a cloud. The media quickly labeled him the Craigslist killer, and suddenly his face was everywhere, plastered across news channels and newspapers. The smiling headshot of a man who did not look like the nickname fit at all. In jail, he maintained his innocence publicly but reportedly struggled in private. Before the case could even go to trial, Markov took his own life in his cell, leaving behind scribbled notes and questions that would never be fully answered. No courtroom confession, no dramatic verdict, just a quiet, grim ending that felt unsettlingly incomplete. The whole story carries a strange mix of modern internet culture and old-fashioned crime, a reminder of how anonymity online can blur trust and danger. It is not just a tale about one man's double life. It is about how easily appearances can fool us. The polite student, the promising doctor, the loving fiancé, and the alleged killer were all the same person, somehow coexisting. The impact on the victims and their families is permanent and devastating, and the public fascination with the case endures because it touches on a modern fear, the danger of encountering someone who seems ordinary but is capable of extraordinary violence. It also shows how quickly someone can build a hidden life behind the mask of normalcy. This case lingers in the public mind long after the initial headlines. It is a story of trust betrayed and innocence lost, not just for the victims but for everyone who thought they knew the man behind the smiling face. It demonstrates the risks of modern technology, how the anonymity of the internet can be exploited for crime, and how appearances alone cannot reveal true intentions. Philip Markov's life and crimes are a grim lesson in human psychology, morality, and the duality of identity. The tragedy forces society to examine how people who seem ordinary can carry out acts of violence while maintaining a respectable public persona. It is a cautionary tale about vigilance, human nature, and the complexity of evil. The story is sobering, a reminder that danger does not always announce itself, and that ordinary appearances can conceal dark intentions. Philip Markov may have died young, but his actions remain a warning of the consequences of deceit, manipulation, and the fragile line between normalcy and criminality. The case continues to be studied and discussed, serving as both a modern, true crime story and a reflection on how easily trust can be weaponized in an age of technology and anonymity. The murder of Breck Bednar is one of the most tragic and chilling examples of online grooming in recent history. A case that reminds us just how dangerous the internet can be when predators manipulate trust. Breck Bednar was a 14-year-old boy from Surrey, England, intelligent, curious, and passionate about technology and gaming. Like many teenagers, he spent hours online, interacting with people who shared his interests, discussing strategies and forming friendships that, on the surface, seemed harmless. Unfortunately, one of those online connections was far from innocent. Louis Daines, an 18-year-old man who presented himself as a successful entrepreneur, befriended Breck on a gaming server. Daines was manipulative, patient, and calculating, and he used these traits to groom Breck over several months. He presented himself as a mentor, telling Breck that he understood him better than anyone else and sowing seeds of doubt about his family. Over time, Breck was increasingly isolated from those who cared about him, a tactic commonly employed by groomers to gain control over their victims. The danger wasn't immediately visible. To anyone looking from the outside, it appeared as if Breck was simply making a new online friend. Despite growing concern from his mother, who repeatedly warned him and sought help from authorities, Breck continued to trust Daines. The online grooming escalated until, in February 2014, Breck made the decision to visit Daines' flat alone. He believed he was meeting a friend and potential mentor, unaware of the life-threatening danger that awaited him. Daines had meticulously planned the attack. Once Breck arrived, he was restrained and brutally stabbed, a violent act that cut short a promising young life. After the murder, Daines attempted to cover his tracks, even making a call to emergency services and pretending that a confrontation had occurred, demonstrating the cold calculation behind the crime. The murder shocked the local community and the nation at large, highlighting the vulnerability of children online and the severe consequences when warning signs are ignored. The legal aftermath of the case was significant. Louis Daines pleaded guilty to murder and was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum of 25 years. The case also exposed serious failings in the response of authorities, particularly regarding online grooming. Surrey police faced criticism for not taking sufficient action despite being alerted to the risks Breck faced. This tragedy led to greater awareness about online safety, prompting campaigns, educational films, and discussions in schools to educate children and parents about the risks of online interactions. Breck's story is now used as a powerful example of how online relationships can be manipulated by those with malicious intent and serves as a warning to young people and their families about the need for vigilance in digital spaces. The case of Breck Bednar is heartbreaking, not only because of the horrific nature of the crime, but also because it was entirely preventable. It underscores the importance of listening to young people's concerns, taking reports of online grooming seriously, and educating children about the dangers of trusting strangers online, no matter how friendly they may seem. Breck's life was tragically cut short, but his story has inspired change, reminding society that safeguarding children online is a responsibility we all share. In the years since his death, his memory has been honored through awareness campaigns and educational initiatives, ensuring that his story continues to protect other children from similar fates. It is a sobering reminder of the dark side of the digital world and the devastating impact of online grooming. In 2001, the quiet German town of Rotenburg became the center of one of the most notorious and unsettling criminal cases in modern history, involving Armin Maiwis, later dubbed the Rotenburg cannibal. What makes this case so infamous is not only the gruesome nature of the crime, but also the chilling fact that the victim, Bernd Brandes, reportedly consented to what happened. Maiwis, a man in his 40s with a fascination for extreme acts and cannibalism, posted an advertisement on an online forum called the Cannibal Cafe, seeking a well-built volunteer who wanted to be eaten. Brandes, a man in his 40s himself, responded to this ad voluntarily, leading to a meeting that ended with his death. While this fact alone shocks the imagination, the story becomes even more complex when considering Maiwis' argument during the trial that the act was a form of assisted suicide, a claim that sparked extensive legal and ethical debate. The meeting between the two men culminated in Maiwis killing Brandes, after which he engaged in acts of cannibalism, recording parts of the encounter on video. These recordings later became crucial pieces of evidence in the investigation and trial. The horror of the crime was compounded by the apparent consent involved, creating a unique legal dilemma, as it forced courts and the public to consider whether a person can legally agree to their own death at the hands of another. Initially, Maiwis was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 8.5 years in prison, a verdict that sparked public outrage and intense media coverage. Many felt that such a lenient sentence failed to reflect the severity and premeditated nature of the crime. Following this, the case was retried, and in 2006, Meiwes was convicted of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment, with the court emphasizing that consent cannot make murder lawful. Beyond the legal intricacies, the case had a profound psychological and social impact, highlighting the darker corners of human desire and the potential dangers of internet anonymity. It demonstrated how online platforms could connect people with extreme and dangerous fantasies, blurring the lines between private thought and public action. The Meiwes case has since become a reference point in discussions about consent, criminal law, and the ethics of assisted death, as well as the study of human sexuality and deviance. Documentaries, podcasts, and true crime analyses have dissected the story from multiple angles, examining Meiwes' motivations, the psychological profile of both men, and the broader societal implications. While some attempt to frame the case as a bizarre form of mutual desire, most legal and ethical perspectives remain firm, asserting that murder cannot be justified by consent. In the end, the Armin Meiwes case is not just a story of murder and cannibalism. It is a chilling exploration of human psychology, law, and morality. It forces society to confront questions about the limits of consent, the responsibilities of individuals online, and the ways in which extreme human behavior challenges the legal and ethical frameworks that are often taken for granted. Even years after the crime, the case continues to captivate, horrify, and provoke reflection, ensuring that the story of the Rotenburg cannibal remains one of the most disturbing yet significant criminal cases in recent memory. The case serves as a grim reminder that reality can sometimes be far stranger and darker than fiction, and it continues to influence discussions in legal, psychological, and ethical circles. Meiwes remains in prison, but the story of what transpired in Rotenburg continues to echo around the world, a haunting example of the extremes of human behavior and the consequences of unchecked desire, making it impossible to forget or ignore. Dating apps are supposed to be a way to meet new people, share a few laughs, and maybe find someone special. For 25-year-old Ashlyn Black, a woman described by friends and family as kind, vibrant, and full of life, using Tinder seemed like just another ordinary way to meet someone. Tragically, what began as a typical first date experience quickly turned into a nightmare that would end her life. On May 23, 2020, Ashlyn matched with 24-year-old Ethan Hunsaker from Layton, Utah. The two exchanged messages and decided to meet in person. They went to a local bar for drinks, likely talking about their jobs, hobbies, and life experiences, as any first date might involve. But behind Hunsaker's outwardly normal appearance lurked something far more disturbing. Just hours after their first meeting, the pair went back to Hunsaker's home, and that would be the last time Ashlyn was ever seen alive. In the early hours of May 24th, Hunsaker called 911 to report that he had killed her. Emergency responders arrived to find Ashlyn's lifeless body. She had suffered multiple stab wounds and signs of strangulation, and the scene shocked investigators, family, and the community alike. The chilling details of the case revealed that Hunsaker had been experiencing homicidal thoughts and had allegedly used Tinder specifically to find a victim. During police interviews, he admitted to the murder and described his actions with disturbing clarity, acknowledging that he had strangled Ashlyn before stabbing her. Court documents and news reports later detailed that Hunsaker had a history of mental health struggles, including depression with psychotic features and anxiety. This raised difficult questions about accountability, the intersection of mental illness and violent behavior, and the precautions people should take when meeting strangers. While his cooperation with law enforcement and willingness to admit guilt allowed investigators to piece together the timeline of events, nothing could undo the loss of Ashlyn's life or the grief her family endured. Ashlyn's family remembered her as someone deeply caring, with a genuine interest in helping others, particularly individuals with special needs. Her death was not only sudden but senseless, a brutal reminder of how quickly ordinary moments can turn catastrophic. Friends and loved ones described the shock and horror of learning that someone could plan such a violent act and follow through in such a calculated way. The fact that Hunsaker called 911 himself added an additional layer of disbelief. It was almost as if he understood the magnitude of what he had done, yet there was no turning back. News outlets, from local Utah papers to national media, covered the case extensively, highlighting both the tragedy of Ashlyn's death and the alarming nature of dating apps being exploited in this way. Ultimately, Hunsaker pleaded guilty, but mentally ill, to first-degree felony murder. The court recognized his mental health challenges, but also acknowledged the severity of his actions. A judge sentenced him to 15 years to life, for the period of mental health treatment required before he would serve his sentence in prison, while the legal system took steps to address both the crime and the perpetrator's psychological state. The impact of Ashlyn's murder extends far beyond the courtroom. It serves as a sobering warning about online dating, the unpredictability of human behavior, and the importance of awareness and safety. In remembering Ashlyn Black, we honor her life, mourn her loss, and reflect on the stark reality that even a routine night out can sometimes hide unimaginable danger.